And the only one who's not doing that is Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
You a fan?
Yeah, I am a fan. Yeah, he's the only one that makes sense to me.
Whoa! Joe Rogan is getting shredded by the right wing on Twitter for endorsing RFK Jr. RFK Jr. responds positively. Trump responds negatively. The media is spinning this, and then Joe Rogan responds and says, I didn't endorse him. Welcome back to the JP Rex channel, my beautiful freedom-loving friend. This is where we like to call out the lies, hypocrisy, and corruption of tyrants and Satan, shine the light of awareness on woke absurdities, and highlight the amazing work of other freedom fighters because truth conquers. Now, this story involves several freedom fighters, all of which I love. Joe Rogan, RFK Jr., and Trump. And it also involves tyrants and Satan, mainstream media. Let's take a look. Cut to a tremendously great follow on Twitter. Colin Rugg posts this of the Joe Rogan clip. Happening now. Right-wing X is shredding Joe Rogan for endorsing Robert F. Kennedy Jr. during his podcast. The claim, Joe Rogan endorsed Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for president. What Rogan said was specifically this.
That's just what they do. That's politics. They do it on the left. They do it on the right. They gaslight you. They manipulate you.
I will stop him right there and slightly disagree. Gaslighting, lying, trashing the other side. They do it on the right. They do it on the left. I think in a sense that's absolutely true. However, I think just having the sort of narrative like, oh, both sides do it equally. They're both guilty. Like they both do it. Yeah, I agree with that. But also you can get a little nuanced and say, at least from my free thinking perspective, the left is way more full of lies, corruption, tyranny, gaslighting than the right is. And specifically, if you're talking about the presidential candidates of President Trump versus Kamala Harris, which side do you think is more guilty of lies, hypocrisy, corruption, gaslighting, deception, manipulation? From my perspective, it's at least 100-to-1 ratio of Kamala guilty versus Trump guilty. So just getting a little nuanced with what I would interject into this conversation, but let's go on.
Promote narratives. And the only one who's not doing that is Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
You a fan?
Yeah, I am a fan. Yeah, he's the only one that makes sense to me. He's the only one that he doesn't attack people. He attacks actions and ideas.
Which I love. I love RFK Jr. And I think that is incredibly true. RFK Jr., he will attack bad idea, bad actions. We love that. I mean, he wrote a whole book on our dear friend, Dr. Anthony Fauci. He attacked his actions. He attacked his ideas. He attacked his lies. It wasn't dirty. It's just all based on, I'm going to shine a light of awareness onto objective reality and obliterate anything in the space between people's awareness and that objective reality. I love that. Now, people on Twitter who would say like, dude, I am right-wing or just like I'm Trump for life. Joe Rogan is getting attacked in a sense. And some of it, most of what I've seen is basically like, hey, you're pulling votes away from Trump for endorsing RFK. And of course, attacks can range from anything. But also, let's just say this was a strict endorsement of RFK Jr. My response to that is, thank you for sharing what you think and how you're going to vote, Mr. Rogan. Do you remember, by the way, back in the day when kind of like who you voted for, people didn't talk about it, and now we expect it. Tell me who you're going to vote for. Some people want it to remain private. My guess is that Joe Rogan will vote for RFK Jr. I don't think he's going to come right out and say that before the election. I think post-election he'll probably share who he voted for. But nonetheless, what did Trump say negatively? Well, before that, let's get to RFK Jr.'s response of this clip. Now, keep in mind, what I love about RFK Jr. is a lot, and I also love Trump a lot. But what I love about RFK Jr. is he specifically is not acknowledging this as an endorsement, which, and Joe Rogan said this is an endorsement, so I think that's very honest and full of integrity of RFK Jr. He's just acknowledging the positive words that Joe Rogan said about RFK Jr. and his character. We'll get back to the controversy in just a second, but first, what I'm about to tell you is not meant to scare you, it's meant to prepare you. As you know, in just the last few weeks, we've had the leading presidential candidate almost get assassinated. Not an inside job, definitely. A global cybersecurity outage by one of the leading experts in the field. And an overnight Democratic chess move not elected by the people. And then with that, I ask, why on October 3rd is there a global bird flu summit scheduled for 1 month before the election. Well, you can check out the brochure for this little bird flu party. I'll put it in the link in the description below. And remember how they just coincidentally did Event 201 right before COVID? Well, this is why I partner with the wellness company. Their team is on the pulse of everything, and they are committed to being a resource so you don't have to panic or have PTSD from the last time. Their Contagion Emergency Kit has a variety of hand-selected medicines to treat respiratory illnesses. And it's medical board approved. No doctors, no time wasted, no fear. My friend, this is what I call rational readiness. Be a step ahead this time. Get the Contagion Kit and save about $50 with code JPReacts. Go to twc.health/JPReacts and use my code. Take a quick intake form after checkout and your kit arrives in about 2 weeks. No red tape. That's twc.health/JPReacts. Get it now, be prepared. Now, back to the controversy. So here's what RFK had to say. From one legitimate guy to another, thank you, Joe Rogan, for always putting substance first. I think America needs to do a lot more putting substance first. And then he goes on to quote Rogan, something he said a little bit later in the clip. RFK Jr., he's the only one that makes sense to me. He's the only one that doesn't attack people. He attacks actions and ideas. He's much more reasonable and intelligent. The guy was an environmental attorney and cleaned up the East River. He's a legitimate guy. RFK Jr. goes on and says, this election is not about left versus right. It's about Americans of goodwill coming together to end the tyranny of corruption in our system so that we once again have a government and economy that works for all people. Let's do this. Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. Now, President Trump took it as an endorsement, and it appears as though President Trump took it personally. On his Truth Social, this is a screenshot of it, President Trump says this, "It will be interesting to see how loudly Joe Rogan gets booed the next time he enters the UFC ring. MAGA 2024. Now, this is in line with President Trump's character. He attacks people. He attacked Vivek Ramaswamy. It's not my way of doing things. In fact, I don't necessarily condone it. But what I can say is somehow this works for President Trump. It just somehow does. I don't know that this will work for President Trump. I mean, Joe Rogan is widely popular, and within the UFC, Joe Rogan is extremely popular, as is President Trump. You can see him when he walks out with Dana White at sold-out arenas at UFC shows. The place just erupts. So objectively, this is what President Trump had to say in response to, I think, what he interpreted as Joe Rogan endorsing RFK Jr. I assume President Trump took it as an endorsement because just the positive words, what Rogan was saying about RFK, that's irrefutable. He was just stating objective facts. Now, before we get to how the manipulative media is spinning this for Kamala Harris, let's maybe put a little weight into what, well, Joe Rogan himself has to say about this. Joe Rogan, in a quote retweet of Colin Rugg's original post, says this, "For the record, this isn't an endorsement." The media is ignoring that. Weird how the media is like fine not working on factual reality, but well, I guess this is the first time they did this. Rogan goes on. "This is me saying that I like RFK Jr. as a person, and I really appreciate the way he discusses things with civility and intelligence. I think we could use more of that in this world. I also think Trump raising his fist and saying fight after getting shot is one of the most American things of all time. I'm not the guy to get political information from. If you want that from a comic, go to Comic Dave Smith, who is amazing. Very well informed. He actually knows what he's talking about. I interpret this to mean, first off, the obvious, Joe Rogan saying this is not an endorsement. I also interpret Joe Rogan with this and making sure people know this isn't an endorsement, along with Rogan's, I think, very intentional inactions of never actively endorsing someone in this election for president. I interpret that to mean like he doesn't want to tell anybody who to vote for. He doesn't feel qualified and informed enough on politics to tell other people who to vote for. And even if he had exquisite knowledge of politics, which I think is way above average for his level of knowledge, he knows more than me. I think his character is one that he still wouldn't want to tell people who to vote for. My interpretation of him is he wants people to think for themselves, not be told by the media, not be told by him, but for them to think for themselves and decide who they want to vote for. By the way, most people, when they're working off their own free thinking and fertilizing that with a little common sense, aren't going to be led to vote for old Kabbalah and Tim Walz. I'm just saying. But the media loves to spin this. How can we use this to support Kamala? So USA Today, Joe Rogan says he supports RFK Jr., much more reasonable and intelligent. Newsweek, who never does misinformation, Joe Rogan makes presidential endorsement. Cut to the fact check. For the record, this isn't an endorsement. All right, Newsweek, we'll let it slide. This must be the first time you've published misinformation. And then you look at the little recommended articles columns from Newsweek. Joe Rogan's RFK endorsement, which is now fake news, welcomed by Kamala Harris supporters. Let's see what that has to say. Many Harris supporters highlighted Rogan's massive platform and said his endorsement of Kennedy rather than Donald Trump, the Republican presidential nominee, thanks for clarifying that, Newsweek didn't know, would benefit Harris. Some celebrated the endorsement and posts on X, formerly Twitter. Thanks for telling us X used to be called Twitter, Newsweek. Such valid information. So basically, the Newsweek is spinning this. Joe Rogan definitely endorsed RFK Jr. Hey, that's pretty good, right? We need you to know this. Joe Rogan is endorsing RFK Jr. because we like that. That will take votes away from Trump, so we like that. We now really want to value what Joe Rogan said, even though he never said that he endorses RFK Jr. We really value what Joe Rogan says. Yeah, we were publishing a lot of stuff about him taking horse dewormer and he's a conspiracy theorist and he's telling other people to take horse medication. What a stupid guy nobody should ever listen to. But you need to listen to what he said here, even though he didn't say what we're saying he said. So with that said, you get 3 freedom fighting names: Joe Rogan, RFK Jr., President Trump, and of course then the media trying to spin that and mold it into something that can benefit Kamala Harris, and this is what you've got. So what I don't like about this is there's some infighting amongst the freedom-loving community. I don't like Joe Rogan because he endorsed RFK Jr., but he didn't endorse him. President Trump going at Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan coming out like, guys, like I just said how I feel about RFK Jr. You vote for who you want to. I like Joe Rogan's position on that. I agree with him that RFK Jr. is amazing. I agree with many others in the freedom fighting community that President Trump is amazing. I agree with Joe Rogan when he says President Trump getting shot in the face and coming up and yelling fight. That's one of the most badass things we've ever seen in America. And with that said, that is the story that people are maybe getting misconstrued and the media is definitely trying to manipulate for the favor of the candidate that they are supporting. Weird how journalists like try to influence you to do what they want you to do instead of inform you. But welcome to 2024. At least we know what's going on. That's it for the Joe Rogan getting obliterated on Twitter controversy. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. I'll look forward to seeing you on our next video, but until then, keep thinking for yourself.